This is Fishy Stitchery with help videos for Fishy Cloth and Mitt. This is the Fishy Mitt in the size Little Fish, and we have just finished all of the repeats for C3. So for the small one, I needed a total of 12 rows because it says knit C3 and then 11 more times. And you can see I used my locking stitch marker before I started the straight rows so I could count. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 total rows. So I'm now ready to bind off loosely. And it says to bind off loosely and to leave a yarn tail about 2 to 3 times the length of the body of the fish. So we're going to go ahead and bind off first. Now I am actually going to show a technique for binding off with a needle that is one size larger. So this is a size 5, this is a size 6. It's a double pointed needle. I find that they are much easier on my wrists for knitting small projects like this rather than using giant needles. So we're going to, of course, slip our first stitch purlwise. And so this is a processed stitch. Now we have to process this one. We're going to knit that stitch and now slip the first stitch over that second stitch. So now this one left on the needle has been processed. So we need to process this guy. So I'm going to knit. And once again, slide that first stitch over the second. So as we do this, it's going to create what kind of looks like a little knit chain that's going to go across. And you do not want to pull this too tight. It will make the end pucker. You don't want it to be so loose that the yarn is like gaping all over the place. But I do find it helpful, if you have it, to use a needle that is one size larger for this. So now we're just going to keep on going to the end. So now we have the last stitch on this needle. I'm going to make that loop a little bit bigger so it doesn't pull out on me. So now you can see what this looks like because this piece is going to fold over. I can remove my locking marker carefully. Okay, so now before I cut the yarn, I want to make sure that I have about 2 to 3 lengths of the body. Because what we're going to do is sew with that tail, and we're going to start here. We're going to sew up, weave across the nose, and then sew back around. So if you take this, there's 2 times the length of the body, and there's 3. And that makes sure that you have more than enough. It's always better to have more than to run short and only have a little area, and then you have all these things to weave in. Is just a big pain. So now that we have cut it, we're going to take this little loop and pull it through. Okay, so now we have, that's our bound off area. Nice chain. We are going to fold it over. So you can see where the straight area was, where we were neither increasing nor decreasing. We kind of want to match it up to that. You can use pins if you want to kind of keep things in place. I'll show you how that looks. These are just regular straight pins. I'm just going to kind of push it in, push it out. Just make sure you don't stick yourself and bleed all over your fishy mitt. All right, so now I have 2 pins kind of holding it in place. You want to get your large eye needle. This is a Susan Bates bent tip needle. I got it from yarn.com, so from Webs. It's a nice large eye, so it's easy to thread. And so now this is one of the benefits of having done the slip stitch at the beginning of each row. It makes it really easy to see where you want to knit together. Let me see, my pin got caught right there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pin because I do not normally use them. So now you're just going to kind of line it up and then just start going for it. So I'm going to go underneath the V right there. Can you see that? Underneath the V next to where my tail came through. So I'm actually going to go back one under that V, and then up through that first initial one again, just to give it a little bit of reinforcement, okay? So now I'm going to go to the next one. I'm going to go under this V, and then under that second V. So you can see I'm just hitting the V's. I'm going to pull through. Oops, got caught. There we go. You can pull snug, don't pull too tight. So now I'm going to continue. I'm going to go through this V and that V and come up this way. I'm going to take that pin out because I don't use them. And so you'll kind of notice like a little straight stitch effect, like an alternating straight stitch across there. And so now just continue. Okay, so we have now seamed up one side of the fishy mitt. We are now just going to weave it across the nose. I like to stick my finger underneath there just to make sure I'm not sewing it together in some weird way. And you're just going to kind of, like you're weaving in the ends almost, just kind of meander across the nose. Doesn't have to be in a straight line. You can pull the tail through for a little bit if you need to. Do not pull tight. You kind of want to stretch it out a little bit before you keep going. Just kind of meander across. Okay, we'll sit right there. So now make sure you kind of pull it and stretch it a little bit. All right, so now we will continue stitching up this side. And if you ever get to a point where it almost seems like things aren't lining up like they should, or you maybe have an extra one right there, it's perfectly fine to skip one. So I'm going to come in right here and continue sewing. Okay, we're working on our last little stitch area. So like before, I kind of want to go over this last area twice, just to give it a little bit more strength. Okay, so now you can see we still have a decently long tail, well over one, so you definitely could just do 2 links if you want. If like this makes you feel like you're wasting yarn, it's perfectly fine. So now we're going to weave in ends, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. You just kind of want to meander around, not necessarily doing just a straight through. If you meander, then it's way less likely to come out. And now we're going to go back the other way. Because these are machine washable, they'll end up being washed a lot. You really want to make sure that the ends don't come off. You also might want to keep your finger in there to make sure that you are not accidentally seaming it shut. That would not be good. Okay, so now we're going to go up one last time. Kind of pull it, stretch it out. Make sure it's not too tight. And then I kind of like to meander it over to the seam at the end. Pull and stretch, and so now I will snip it right there. Okay, so now we can do the same thing for the tail at the tail. And for these, I kind of like to keep it near the edge. If you do it all right here, it can be a little bulky. So maybe I'll meander down one side, meander up the other side, and then just kind of go across this back area a little bit. All right, and that's usually good enough. Stretch it out before you snip it. And there you go. You have a finished little fishy mitt in little fish size.